Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss something really rather remarkable as someone who commentates on British politics, British society. It truly is stupendous, and that is in Bristol today as I'm recording this. A statue of a slave trader was hauled down by the mob. But first, if you want to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, a statue of a chap called Edward Colston was hauled down in Bristol as part of a Black Lives Matter protest. And it was quite a stunning scene. And I have to say, it's had a serious impression upon me. And not because I was a... If you were in Bristol, I gather, there's been a lot of calls for the council to remove this statue. This is a statue of a slave trader. Now, British history being what it is, I am not in favour of trying to dissolve away unpleasant parts of our past. There'd be no history left to talk about, let's be honest. And, you know, if a statue is erected of someone who was a bit of an arsehole for one thing, but that's not the reason it was erected, I'm not in favour of being removed either. There's going to be an awful lot of lauded British historical figures that were, frankly, dicks. But this statue of Edward Colston, after a bit of research, was erected specifically because he was a slave trader. It wasn't erected because he founded the city or anything, or did any, funded a load of schools or anything laudable like that, and happened to be a slave trader as well. It's like, this statue was erected long after he was dead. It wasn't even, erected by his contemporaries. This was erected, I gather, not much more than 100 years ago. And specifically at a time where the British Empire was on the wane, and it was erected to try and hark back to those golden ages. And so it was erected for that. It was a statue that was intended to represent the domination of empire. That alone was enough reason to have torn it down, never mind who the statue was of. Just what it represented was vile. And it was amazing that this thing was still up there. But that's not the reason why I found it remarkable, why it actually affected me watching it, and it genuinely shocked me. The reason is really, it makes no difference what the statue was, what it represents for me, because I don't think I've even been to Bristol. I didn't know about this statue until some bugger tore it down today. I didn't know about Edward Colston until I had to look him up. Didn't know why the statue was erected until I looked it up. What got me was, this happened in Britain. This happened in Britain. We've all seen images of statues being torn down. Why are they torn down? What is the cause? All the time, 100% of the time. Revolution. Now, I'm not saying revolution coming to Britain, but it does remind me, since I've been doing this channel, which has just now received 50,000 subscribers. Wow, thank you, by the way. I've constantly said when people, over the last year, the channel has been growing. Of course, the government have been treating us in Britain with more and more contempt and disdain. And people have said, the people won't stand for this, people won't stand for this. And I've constantly said, yes, they will. Because this is Britain. We just grumble, we go about our way. And yeah, you occasionally get riots. That happens every now and then. Something will spark that off. We're humans after all. We're not different to anyone else, even though the Brexiteers may say otherwise. But it's just not in our culture. The very idea that someone would go, this statue represents everything that's wrong with this, with this society. We should pull it down. And people go, someone else we should really write a letter to the council. And we did. Well, they're probably still considering it. The idea of someone just pulling, and it's not just a few people. Yeah, you could understand a few people. We've got activists in this country, like any other country would absolutely go for it. But to be cheered on, roared on, I watched the footage and I listened. absolutely roared on. And these protests, and it brings me to a few years ago. Do you remember the Arab Spring? Remarkable time, where a protest in one country then spread to another and another and another. And it wasn't different countries all protesting about a different thing. They were all protesting about the same thing because they had the same common problem. And I'm really starting to think, when I saw that statue come down, because I've done a video for tomorrow talking about the the situation in America, the protests in America. I'm risking it getting through YouTube because they don't like things like that sometimes. And I was just thinking, well, you've had protests in this country, and this one in Bristol was one of them. And it's not just, a protest to show solidarity with the American people, and particularly the black community in America. We've got the same problems in this country. The consequences are not as severe. But the cause is still there, and lives are still ruined because of racism in this country, bigotry in general. So the protests are personal to us as well in this country. But to see a statue fall like that, that's not just people going out and protesting. And part of it, again, it comes back to this. Why have people done this in Bristol? They've done it because various groups through the years have said to the council, this statue is an affront to us. This is not who Bristol are. This is not what we want to show the world. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. And they were ignored and ignored and ignored. And now finally, people have stood up and said, right, we'll get rid of it ourselves. And I think there is a possibility now that people around this country will see this and go, well, what's wrong with our city? What's wrong with our town? What's wrong with our country? And say, well, we're sick of this. We've had enough. And we're going to do something about it. If the people we elect will not do what we want them to do, we'll do it ourselves. In Bristol, they just needed a bit of rope. Around the rest of the country, it may need other things. Not to tear things down. I'm not talking about just wanton destruction, of course. There may not be a symbol in some, or that there will be in some, if you look for it. But there may not be a symbol just to tear down in other towns and cities. But there may be a sufficiently outraged public that goes, right, we're going to insist that our MPs or councillors take notice of us, and we're going to write to them every day, and we're going to protest outside their buildings, and we're not going away until you've dealt with this. An interesting time that we might actually see the closest thing that you can get to a revolution in Britain. We don't do revolutions in Britain. When we had a revolution, we had an industrial revolution, didn't we? We made ships. That was our revolution. We'll make some ships. The French were looking at us. You sure you don't want to chop any aristocrats' heads off? No. Ships. They're more practical, more useful. We're very practical people in some ways. I know about Brexit. Don't remind me about Brexit. Just for now, let's pretend we're a practical people. We used to be a practical people. We'll say that. We might still again be. But and that is the reason why, when I saw this statue, I'm still sort of affected now. It's because I would never have, if someone had tried to tell me that, if someone had said, oh, there's a group heading towards this statue of a slave trader in Bristol, do you think they'd pull it down? I would have bet a lot of money that no, of course not. They'll chant around it, and they'll write a lot of angry letters to the council yet again. Pull it down, don't be silly. This is Britain. This is Britain that has maybe been pushed too far, because one thing I've always said is the Conservative government treat us like shit, absolute shit. But what they're very skilled at is knowing just how far they can push us, because everyone has the breaking point. And this protest isn't against the Conservative government, don't get me wrong. It's not It's not even particularly against the council in Bristol, even though, you know, the council were charged by the people effectively to get rid of it and did not. I don't think there's any anger towards any politicians in this. I mean, I don't know. I'm not there, but I don't detect that from what I see on social media. But it does make me think if people around the country just look at that and look at it as an example of the people taking control where their elected leaders will not show leadership, maybe there's going to be some interesting things happening in this country this year. Maybe. But anyway, there it is. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.